Welcome to the HIO Show, everybody. I'm Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette, joined by our regulars this week, Chris Nyland, former hat from TSN Radio 690, columnist Jack Todd, and Andy Bennett from CBC Daybreak. Chris, an interesting story in La Presse this week with Tom Gilbert saying the problem with the team, the Canadiens this year, is immaturity. They didn't have enough mature leaders, and they started looking for excuses on a team that has no excuses up in its locker room. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a guy that was there, right? I mean, he's in the room. He knows what's going on. I wish he was more forthcoming, though, and really told us what's going on in there. I guess you have to agree with him when you look at the numbers, you look at the way that this team played, look at some of the things that have happened over the course of this season. They didn't show a lot of maturity in the way they played. You know, it was great when everything was going well at the beginning, but this caved in pretty quickly and constantly over the season. So did anybody really stand up and take the bull by the horns? Maybe someone tried. It didn't work. And to me, this goes back to there's an issue in the room. And when there's an issue in the room, sometimes there's a elderly player, if you will, a mature player that can kind of step in and calm things down and straighten things out. Honestly, I look at this room and they don't have it. They have a couple guys that have been around, in Markov and Plekanec. These are veteran players.
They're not vocal guys, though.
But they're not leaders, and they have the ace. I mean, two guys. I mean, Andrei Markov would have the C if he wanted it. He made it known he didn't want it. He's not a leader. He'll go play, but he's not a leader. So that A, is that just there for good looks, like hanging an ornament on a tree? I truly believe that he isn't the leader, and that certainly didn't help the cause.
In hindsight, that 9-0 start, Jack, might have hurt this team. Maybe they thought they were better than they were, and everything was rosy, and the new leadership
gave them the illusion they were great. You know, I mean, really, the start went to the end of November, and then the collapse was just so total. And you know, it's an organization, and I take this right from Jeff Molson down. They handle success really well. You know, they're humble, they're on top of the world, everything's great. Man, they do not handle adversity at all. Every single decision they had to make from the top, everything that was happening in the room from the time the wheels started to fall off until now was screwed up as much as it could be.
And there's always seems to be some sort of blame shifted to things that don't seem to be happening. Like, I always wonder if there's this hangover from things that have happened in the past. But how many times have we heard, you hear Max Pacioretty saying, people think we're just out here playing for the paycheck. And it's like, who's accusing you of that? Nobody asked you that question. Nobody said that to you. And then everything you ask, even if you're trying to ask just a well thought out hockey question, it's met with this defiance, like you're questioning.
You're second guessing.
Guessing, and it just seems that, 9-0 could be a bad start, but it's an 82-game season. You're telling me you can't recover, you can't get back. I know they've had a lot of injuries, but you're right. It just seems like there were excuses all over the place, and it's either the media that's making things too difficult, or they're asking too many questions, and it's just, it seems a bit silly.
I think somebody, Chris, who has to shoulder some blame when we look back on this season is the medical team. Just the inability to diagnose Carey Price's injury. At first, he was going to be out a game, a week, and now it's turned out to be the whole season. And I think that made it tougher for Marc Bergevin not knowing. If he had known right then Carey Price would be out for the year, maybe he would have went out and got a veteran goalie.
I guess. I don't know who the doctor is, but I'd say more so the doctors have to have a handle on that, know what's going on, one. Two, when the media doesn't know about the injury and what it is, it's really difficult to talk about it. I mean, everybody's speculating. What is it? What is it? How come we can't know? And so it just brings more attention to it. I think if, people knew to begin with, and okay, let's get on with it, get better and get back on the ice. But now everybody's speculating. It's always out there. Everybody's talking about it. Something that they probably don't like. But,
well, they definitely don't.
There is something to say, the medical team, did they make a mistake with him? Or did he fool them, Carey Price, and say, listen, I feel great, I want to come back. So then you can't blame the medical team.
Well, yeah, but they've got the MRIs and things. He doesn't necessarily have that stuff. But I just wonder, if if someone in this organization at some point just needs to step forward and say, look, we have to look at the example of Sidney Crosby and the way they handled his concussion. Okay, they had a bad diagnosis at the first one. They said it was his neck. But after that, you have the league's biggest superstar. You knew he had a concussion. Everything followed from that. Now you've got probably the league's most valuable player to his team, maybe ever, and complete wall of silence. Like, we don't even really know if it's a knee or a hip or what. Everybody thinks right knee, but come on.
I agree
Why?
that there has to be some accountability. I don't know whether you agree with this or not, but you look down, it's the doctors or the strength and conditioning or the trainers. I mean, half the team with lower body injuries, somebody's got to be accountable for that. I mean, these guys are athletes. They're supposed to prepare themselves to play, but there are whole teams in place to make sure that they are prepared to play, so that their bodies are ready for us, so that they can take the impact of an NHL game. And yes, things are going to happen, but half your team with a lower body injury, I mean...
And he's not the only one who came back too soon either. You had a whole bunch of players
there. As far as being ready, guys are in shape. You get hurt, low body injury, whatever it is, you get hurt. You can't put that on the training staff.
Why not? I mean, maybe they're not warm. Maybe they're not strong enough.
They're not great on flexibility. Hockey players in general are not.
Stretch. You see them stretching all the time. You can't put that on the training staff. These guys are ready to play. They were ready to play at the beginning of the year. We saw it. They were in shape. Lower body injuries, they happen in hockey. It's a violent game. It's a tough game. To put it on the train.
Yeah, but you have to make the right decision about when they come back. And they had a whole slew of guys there. Petrie, Mitchell, Smith-Pelly, Price being the big one. But you had a bunch of guys that were out of the lineup, came back, and really sucked at first when they came back. So who's making the call?
Nathan Beaulieu coming back.
Beaulieu?
Also, there's another one. It's been the story of the season. Injuries.
There's so many of them. Like it's got to down the chain somewhere. Someone has got to.
But you basically got the same staff though that you had last year when they were amazingly healthy. I saw this under Carbo too. A really healthy season when they're great, and then a season when they're not healthy at all and everything falls apart.
Some of it is bad luck too.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after a short break, and we'll talk about the NHL concussion lawsuit. Welcome back, everybody. The concussion lawsuit that some NHL players are filing against the league. Jeff Molson's name has come up in the latest emails that come out in an exchange with Gary Bettman. Molson said, although we are making good progress, I don't think it's enough until any head hit is made illegal. I hope we get there soon. This was in 2011. What do you think about the take about what Molson's saying and where this concussion lawsuit might go, Chris?
Obviously he wants it out of the game. I think everybody does, but, easier said than done. And I get that people say when something like that happens, you got to stop making the suspensions meaningful, like 20 games every time it happens. Guys there's gonna be violent collisions. Some guys are gonna, I don't think intentionally headhunt per se, but try and hit guys when they're in vulnerable positions, and when they do, sometimes they overdo it. And I don't think you see guys like going elbowing in the head like back in our day, but there's certainly cases where it does happen. And listen, Mr. Molson, stating that he'd like to see it get out of the league sooner or later, but things have kind of more or less stayed the same, to be honest.
He also said, Andy, in the email exchange, Molson said, it's good to hear, Bettman said we're unlikely at risk, and Molson said, it's good to hear we're unlikely at risk. That was my biggest fear. I think that leads to the business side of this also.
When you read that email chain, obviously the concern for Molson, which is fine, he's a businessman, was about the liability that they have for, these former players coming after them and the lack of attention or the lack of seriousness they've put to these concussion things. But the NHL, this is not news. They purposely have the most porous concussion protocol in the league. It's so incredibly easy to get around. This is why you have players saying, I feel fine, and then the defense being, the player said he was fine, and going back in there. They have research groups that work for 10 years and then get disbanded because they haven't come to a conclusion. It's if anybody actually believes that the NHL is taking concussions seriously, it's an absolute joke, and I think it's time for them to.
You get knocked out in boxing, you're gone 3 or 4 months. You get knocked out in hockey, you can come back the next game. You know, it's not being handled at all. Bettman, I think the important thing about the emails is they strip off the pretext that the league didn't know and that the league was out in front of things. They obviously knew, and they were as behind things as you can get. And somewhere down the line, this could have multi-million-dollar repercussions. That's what's
the
worrying.
The unfortunate thing is that we do know medically so little about the brain, is that there is always this defense from Bettman that, oh, this isn't medically proven. Everybody knows right now that there's links. So, you know, if you're going to wait for this empirical evidence of a live brain that can be dissected, I mean, that's...
The players need to take some responsibility too, Chris. I mean, their union, the NHLPA, fought against mandatory visors. This is a league players used to play without helmets. Guys who did wear helmets wore the chin straps down low. So I think the players and the players' union has some responsibility.
Yeah, they do. And again, they voted against the masks. But again, more guys have had to retire because of concussions than they have from losing eyes. But you know, it's obviously, it's a huge problem, and I don't know. I know Bettman liked to probably not have this problem, but it's there now. In the league, you know, you look at Giroux just coming back. He ends up getting knocked out. He comes back. Bottom line there, and what it looks like is, well, player himself says he's okay, so we're going to let him go. Yeah. And plus, we have to win a hockey game because we got to make the playoffs here in Philly. So, you know. How can you get the league to police a situation like that? Or oversee a situation like Claude Giroux?
Where I think the league could be in trouble, though, is the allowing fighting, bare-knuckle fighting. And Brendan Shanahan, one of the emails that has come out when he was director of safety, he said that players should be thrown out of the game after a fight, which is... Yeah,
actually, that was very much... And I always had the feeling when he was running the public safety department that there was a tension between him and you know, the Daily Bettman crew and all those. And I mean, you had Bettman cutting some of his suspensions that he handed out, things like that, and that email made it sound like Shanahan was several light years ahead of the rest of the league in dealing with concussions.
And you could see it when Brendan Shanahan was in that role. It was the first time when there was actually more clarity with the suspensions. They put out the videos on the NHL website. He would try and explain clearly why he decided to give a certain number of games. And that email shows that he legitimately had a desire to try and keep these players safe. And that's one of the things that, to me, it seems like it's lacking in the league. I mean, you need to start thinking about these guys' career, their lives post-hockey career. I mean, these are human beings, and they're having a huge repercussions from these head injuries.
There's always going to be, it's a physical game. It's like football. There's going to be concussions. Emelin against the Red Wings the other night threw a solid body check. There was talk it might be reviewed, but I thought it was a clean hit.
Well, the hit was questionable because the player didn't have the puck, right? Larkin was going for the puck. It was right there, and then Datsuk stole it from him. So I can give him a pass on that, Yemelin. You know, the puck is right there, and the kid's coming with speed. You know, Alexei Yemelin, though, who does have a plate in his head, should learn that after he makes a hit like that, he has to be ready. For someone coming at him, and certainly try and protect himself, because I know he's not supposed to fight. Yeah, he's not supposed to fight, but and they say if he gets one more punch into that area, it could end his career himself. So he's got to be careful with that and get ready to defend himself, not just put his face there so the other guy can punch it.
Now, Mike Condon this week announces the Canadiens' Bill Masterton Trophy nominee for perseverance, dedication to hockey. Nobody's had a tougher ride than this guy this year. I think he's handled it fantastic. I don't think he can be blamed for what's happened.
He's been very mature, he's been very classy, and most of the games he's been very good. He's had a few bad games, but, you know, until they reached out for Scrivens, he had no backup. He was it. The whole team's falling apart in front of him. Injuries, they've had waves of injuries, especially on the blue line. And, you know, he's been there every night, and he's probably the biggest reason, you know, they're not sitting on 60 points right now.
You kind of wish sometimes when you hear him talk too, even after some of those games where he's been lit up, you know, I wish Max Pacioretty had some of Condon's mental toughness or mental, just something. He just seems so strong mentally with what he's been through, and you compare that with some of the situations that we've seen with Pacioretty this year, and it's like, man, I wish they could meld together somehow.
Yeah, it's so hard. You know, you look, Andy, and I can hear you. You know, I couldn't imagine this season having to talk to reporters, you know, after the beginning, and then the way it fell off the edge, and every night losing.
I don't even want to be a reporter in there.
Yeah, like, you know, the likes of Todd coming in.
Well, Condon has been there.
Knuckles, what happened tonight? Enough, Jack. You know, enough. It's tough every night. I get it. You're the captain, you got to talk, but it's really tough to come out there and put the big smiley face on it. Hey, everybody.
That's it for this week's show. We'll all talk again next week.